Welcome back to our series where we discuss reverse meal planning and tips to make you successful. Now, you may be wondering, why does everyone say no shortcuts? You know what? Shortcuts are a great thing when it comes to reverse meal planning. These shortcuts today that I'm going to share with you can save you so much time and energy, and yes, even money. So let's dive into our 3 tips today. But first, we need to talk about your freezer. Your freezer is a magic space. I am totally serious. Years ago, when we were only dealing with one fridge that had the little built in tiny freezer, I unfortunately really couldn't be able to stock up on items when they were at a great price and on sale. I just didn't have the room. Now, this does not mean at any time that I'm telling you to run out and buy a gigantic, huge freezer. What I'm saying is that when we started this journey, we literally had no space. So we went and bought a small scratch and dent reach in freezer. It's like a little chest freezer. And I want to say we spent like $100. It was not much at all. And then over the years, we would upgrade to a bigger one, a better one. You know what I mean? We didn't start at this point. We started very, very small. So, what you should do if you don't currently have a freezer is start keeping an eye out for some deals, start saving up some cash so you can pay for it without putting it on a charge card. Some great places to look for one would be Facebook Marketplace, garage sales. When people are moving, a lot of times they get rid of their freezers. Now, when we first had that, little reach in freezer that we got, we really mainly just stocked up on high priced items. That's going to be like your meats, and we threw in a couple frozen pizzas just in case. Now, we actually traded in that first freezer with someone else that wanted to downsize. So we were able to upgrade to a bigger space. And then eventually we ended up getting like the big upright freezer. We just got it a couple months ago. Now, because of that, we no longer have to focus on just meats and plan Bs. We have a lot of room. So now we are stocking up on things like frozen veggies, whether we bought them or we made them ourselves. We're stocking up on pre-cooked items, items that we cook and then freeze. And then also now we have plenty of room for, like, we can store bags of chicken bones or turkey bones so that we can make broth, and then we can store the broth. But I'm getting kind of ahead of myself. So let's get into the tips. My first shortcut tip is start freezing your produce. If you have items like bananas, peppers, onions that you can't fully use before they go bad, start freezing them for later. Seriously, almost any produce except for lettuces can be frozen. And most of the time, you don't even have to cook them. All you have to do is wash them, chop them to whatever desired shape that you want, and then put them on. My favorite way is to just get a sheet pan, put down a piece of parchment, spread it out, put it in the freezer for an hour or two until it's mostly frozen. Take it off the pan, put it in either like a Ziploc bag or, if you have a food saver bag, and then make sure that you date it and you label it. Okay. Now, there are some vegetables that you would need to blanch or pre cook prior to doing them, but the majority of items, like the ones we mentioned, onions, bananas, peppers, mushrooms, all those types of things really just have to be washed, chopped, and then frozen. And then once you start really getting good at preserving your produce that you're not going to be able to use in time, then you can start taking advantage of things like markdowns and manager specials. My local stores, they mark down a ton of produce. So I can get kind of high quality, sometimes even organic produce for pennies on the dollar. And I know I'm not going to be able to use it within the next couple of days. So I just go ahead and prep it, and then I stock my freezer. And then later on, I don't necessarily have to worry about, ooh, what vegetables are we going to use? So I know your question is, how is this a shortcut? Well, how many times have you gone to make dinner, but realized that everything you needed to be washed, needed to be chopped? And you know what? That totally takes a lot of time, but it also takes a lot of energy. And sometimes I don't always have that, the time or the energy part, to be honest. So you can skip the whole chopping and washing thing altogether by just pulling out of your freezer things like onions and peppers that are already washed, already chopped, and already frozen. And they're so easy to just add to your pan. So if I'm making something that involves like ground meat, like whether it's ground turkey, ground beef, or ground pork. I just throw my frozen items in with it and it defrosts and it cooks, and you cannot tell the difference. Honestly, not much difference there. And some of these items, like onions, you don't even have to truly chop it. You could put it in a food processor, one of those choppers that you just smash down. Or if you just have a whole bunch of stuff, I just use a knife and I just go through a whole bunch of items all at the same time. So that way I'm just dedicating like a 1 hour block to prep and wash and then go ahead and put it all in the freezer. Saves so much time, so much money, and it really comes in handy on those nights that I just don't have the energy to chop. Number two is freeze your leftovers. Now, food waste is more than likely the number one budget killer when it comes to groceries. So, we can do this in so many ways. If you make a large batch of something and you know that you're not going to be able to eat it all, start freezing it into single portions, and then now you have meals ready to go later. Now, you can take this to the next level by purposely making more leftovers than you need and then freezing them. Now, I am still working on freezing full meals, but there are tons of resources out there where you can learn how to make different items like bag dump meals, where you basically combine everything with sauces and seasoning and then you just dump it into like a crock pot. There are so many things out there. But if you get into this habit of freezing leftovers or purposely making leftovers to freeze, and you may want to look at the video that we did a little while ago where we made a bunch of white rice in the slow cooker. That is so simple. You literally just set it and forget it. You don't have to babysit it. And once it's done, then you can either do individual portions or do large for like a whole family meal. And then you can just freeze it. And that'll save you 20 minutes on nights where you need white rice. So simple. Now, there's a completely different way that you can go with this. And this is where basically you're going to make items that you know that you love to eat, but you're going to pre-make them, do some batch cooking, and then freeze them for later. And this can be done for a ton of different items. One of the things that we're working on personally is we're doing where we freeze already cooked meat. Now, in the past, we have done things like if you have ground meat, whether that's ground pork, ground beef, ground turkey, you can go ahead and cook up a huge batch of it, drain off the grease. Same thing that we were talking about before. You spread it out on some parchment paper, let it freeze. And then once it's frozen, just go ahead and like pre-portion it out. I usually do like 1 cup little bags, or you can do bigger bags. By freezing it on the sheet pan, each individual item becomes frozen and it doesn't become a giant block of meat. So then on those nights that you're super busy, you don't have a lot of time, you can just grab that bag of pre-cooked ground meat. I use a cup measure out how much I want, put it in a pan, use a little bit of water, and it steams it back to life. Now, one of the tricks here, if you're going to freeze already cooked meat, whether, talking about ground meats or like shredded chicken or pulled pork, I try to keep sauces and seasonings to a minimum just because that will make it to where the meals that you can make are so much more varied because you're going to add your own seasoning and your own sauces later on. Now, we mentioned you can freeze rice for later on, but you can also make breakfast sandwiches, muffins, quick breads, all those items. You can go ahead and cook and make batches where you make like a whole bunch of muffins or a whole bunch of quick breads. Go ahead and freeze those, and then later on you can pull those out as you need them. This will help you have variety in your breakfasts as well as save you a ton of time because all you really have to do is either defrost them the night before or pop them in the microwave in the morning. The trick here though is truly the batch cooking part. So this is one of those things where you're going to use the time that you have when you have it. So that way, when you don't have time, you can save time. You get what I mean? Because sometimes I don't have time in the middle of the week, but on the weekends, I can dedicate an hour to batch cook a whole bunch of muffins. And then for the next week or two, I've got plenty of muffins. Now, tip three may surprise some of you, but I am actually a huge fan of Plan B meals. And this Plan B is just what I call them. Really, they are frozen dinners like pizzas or sometimes you get those like voila bags where it's got the pasta and the chicken and the sauce. It could be anything. It could be hot dogs, corn dogs, taquitos, whatever. Mainly, these are convenience meals, okay? They're the ones you pull from the freezer, you pop in the oven or the air fryer, and boom, you have a snack or a lunch or dinner. Now, there are going to be times when you have no energy, when your plans change last minute, or God forbid, you get sick or one of your kids gets sick and you just physically can't cook. So, I find that having these backup meals in the freezer is going to solve a lot of stress because I physically get stressed when especially when I'm sick or I'm ill and everybody's still got to eat and I've still got to feed them. So, having these meals ahead of time in your freezer are going to keep you from ordering like overpriced pizza, hitting the drive-thru, or using like a delivery service like DoorDash. Here is the kicker to this tip. I only buy these items and put them in my freezer when I find them on sale. Yes. So I'm not going to go out and pay full price for a frozen pizza or for chicken nuggets or whatever because I'm only going to stock up on them and buy them when I have a deal, when there's a coupon, when they're on markdown. So that way I'm going to save a whole lot more money by having these items, but I'm going to save even more because I got them at a lower cost. Now, before you come at me for serving my kids frozen pizza or chicken nuggets, I do cook them first and we practice moderation. So while we may serve them a frozen meal, we almost always serve all of our meals with fruits and with veggies. And you know what? A frozen corn dog or taquito is not going to hurt someone every once in a while. We just try not to do it every night if we can. But you know what? Life happens. There are times when I am so overbooked, I have so much going on that my main goal is just to get my kids and my family fed. It's not necessarily about breaking, my back when I am absolutely dead just because somebody else says that we can't have a convenience food. So, what are some of the items that you routinely buy for your freezer? I know for me, I recently just bought a huge pre cooked ham for super cheap. I chopped it pretty much in half to where I had one medium sized roast, and the other half, I just chopped it down into little pieces. So it's perfect to just be able to start using for some other meals. So, what have you recently added to your freezer stash that you needed to do a little prep today, but that you will enjoy later? And stick around for the rest of this series. We have a couple more, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. And trust me, we will get through this journey together. We're going to save some money, we're going to cook some awesome stuff, and you know what? We're going to have a little fun along the way. So, see you guys later. Bye.